This is A Geek Leader. Hey guys, welcome to 2019. This is the first show of the year for a Geek Leader podcast, and it's going to be an exciting show. Today, we've got Tricia Broderick on, and she has over 20 years of experience in the software development area. She is focused mostly on project management now. She's an exceptional leader, coach, mentor, and facilitator. She's a popular speaker at many different national conferences, and we talk about all kinds of things: how to lead others, how to teach others. We talk about some of the burnout issues that people don't talk about when it comes to working and work-life balance. We talk about mental health within leaders and how to encourage people and be positive when it comes to leadership. So give it up for Tricia Broderick.
Okay. I have to remind myself it's like a 30-minute podcast. This can get kind of long.
Go as long as you need to.
I was kind of late in the in high school. I took a programming class, Pascal, in the 90s, and fell in love, and actually kind of got to a place where I was like, wow, I'm kind of better at this than a lot of my classmates, where I was helping them finish their assignments and stuff. So I went into college knowing that I was targeting computer science, and went to Michigan State University, graduated with a computer science and engineering degree, and went out and started developing. I did a lot of mainframe development, COBOL, PL1, Dial 280, but I also did a lot of J2E development, late 90s, early 2000s, right when web apps were really starting to become a thing. And the cool part for me was I actually got exposure to extreme programming very early in 2000, and was able to kind of help a financial institution, a client of mine, learn how to write J2E web apps and what that meant. And we used extreme programming as the framework. So I kind of got a bug for the teaching element and the coaching element and helping others pretty early in my career. But then I proceeded forward. I got pulled into project management, and I will own that it was a little kicking and screaming. I kind of fought losing my tech cred, but my OCD checkmark self came out as well, and I liked me a good project plan. I'm not gonna front. I cried when I took Microsoft Project off my computer, but I went into project management for a number of years. Did a number of different kinds of projects, everything from financial institutions to large government projects to small independent software vendors. So kind of a wide spectrum. Eventually it landed at a company that I absolutely adore to this day, TechSmith, where I became the director of development, where we made Snagit, Camtasia, Relay, Screencast.com, a number of different software products and services, and really got to explore the leader I truly wanted to be. And I think that's where I came into my own as a technical leader in an organization for software development. I proceeded to want to fulfill a dream in living in Colorado, so I kind of explored what my other options were, because I didn't want to be a remote executive, or I couldn't be a remote executive in this situation. So started going down the path of Agile coaching and training officially, where I learned that a lot of the challenges I had faced as a leader, I wasn't alone, and that there were a lot of other leaders struggling or getting by gut or by the don't be a jerk type leadership, and not really understanding what was working about it, what wasn't. So I've pretty much been focused on that and helping leaders across different companies as a principal with Agile For All now. I still choose to stay focused in the software development space. It's, even though I don't code anymore, it is my passion. It's the industry that helped me grow and learn and find out who I was. So I stay loyal to kind of trying to help leaders in the software development space.
So I have a slew of questions just from that. So you're one of the few people that I've talked to that actually did mainframe programming to start with. I worked at a company in the past where we had to work on a mainframe as well. It's definitely a different beast.
It is, and I really don't think people fully understand how many systems are still running on mainframe like applications. But my first coding job was actually at Michigan State University for the administration department, and I was updating payroll systems and different administrative applications. And I would love to tell you that they've all migrated away from mainframe languages, but a good percentage is still running on COBOL, Dial 280 and PL1. It's quite crazy, especially because you don't have many developers today that are learning those languages.
Yeah, I worked for an ISP, and pretty much their whole ERP system was running on COBOL and DBT. Uh-huh. So, yeah,
I when I got into object-oriented programming and stuff, I was like, no, I fully get it. I've seen classes that were too many lines to even count. Like, it was just crazy. And so it gave me a nice perspective, I think, when I did go over to J2E and understanding the power of different patterns and what it could do in terms of maintenance for systems.
Yeah. That's one of the things that we worked on as a company. So we tried to convert all of our COBOL into J2E just so we could have basically to train the COBOL developers on object-oriented programming, and then to have something that's more portable when we wanted to move away from the mainframe environment.
Yeah. Did you do it?
I left before they finished it. We were about 5 years in. I'll go ahead and say that.
Fair enough. It was kind of a loaded question. I'm probably not the answer.
Yeah. So you mentioned extreme programming, and for a large portion of our audience that may work in the infrastructure or the cybersecurity group, what is extreme programming? What does that mean to you?
Extreme programming is a agile framework, and at the time, actually, when Ketbeck released and kind of, I think it was his book. I'm not sure if the year was like 1999. I don't quote me on this or what year. It was late 90s when Kent released extreme programming for others to explore and take a look at. And it was really a focus on technical excellence and what it would mean to build software where you're collaborating and working to discover the most innovative quality solution you could. And so it really put an emphasis on technical excellence. And especially for me at that time in my career, that was huge. I mean, that was incredibly important, but it was also really difficult at times. I mean, pairing was not a normal thing then. And my version of pairing was having someone stand behind me so I could talk out loud while I was going through my code, and I didn't want them to talk. I just wanted to not look dumb talking to myself. So in some ways I could already see the benefit, but it was a very different thing to really be driven with collective code ownership and these kinds of concepts that really just didn't exist at that time. And it served us very well while we were teaching a client how to do it, because then there were no silos of people owning certain parts of the code. We were pairing and helping each other learn. But I don't think I even fully understood the benefit at that time, because I was coming at it from a lens of teaching more so than just coding.
Yeah, I gotcha. So when it comes into making that shift, from a developer to a project manager, what skills did you find you were maybe lacking or thought you needed that you didn't need, or what were some things that were just, what's that gap analysis like? What was that?
Pretty significant. So when I first became a project manager, I had a very hard line, almost to the point that I was condescending and judgmental to people, that if you were a project manager or a technical lead, you better know how to code, and you better be able to code with everybody, or you're not really valuable lead. And because that's where my skills were, that's where I was comfortable. I felt most satisfied in that I had accomplished and added value most during the day when I could just get in the code and start, helping somebody finish something, than I was helping to understand how to better communicate with stakeholders and to facilitate a difficult conversation, or help my team take ownership and deliver and not just kind of feel like cogs in the wheel. And so I really didn't my minor in college was business administration, but I never had any facilitation classes. I never had any training about how to train people. I mean, we had leadership classes, but they were kind of more time organization skills or, Stephen Covey's 5, the highly effective people, super valuable, but not really how do you lead teams and other people, and especially in knowledge work, not just task-based work. And so I mean, my gap was just enormous. And so I would say easily for the first couple of years whether it be a project manager, team lead, I relied more on my development skills to help lead the team than I did on any other skill set.
Do you think having those development skills kind of helped you communicate better with them, or do you think that maybe gave you some rapport? Or
it definitely gave me rapport initially, especially because I couldn't build it based on anything else. Right? Like, I mean, it was my crutch. And when you don't know how to add value in other ways, but you're in this role, you rely on the ways that you currently, from your previous job. And it's a challenge most leaders face, right? You get promoted because of your previous job, but a majority of the time, those skills are not the skills you need in your next job. Yet those are the ones you're comfortable with. Those are the ones that have brought you success. Those are the ones that you can rely on. And so you go to those. I'm pretty sure if I had a conversation with some of the early people in those early project management days, I'd have some apologizing to do. Because, if there was a moment where I was struggling with something in my current role, I found comfort just going and coding.
Yeah, I totally get that. I know when I first got promoted into a management team, I was on a web and mobile development team. And we were just web development at the time. We didn't do mobile apps yet. But I got promoted to be their manager. And it was almost instantly my boss, the director's like, hey, no more coding. You just need to manage. And what do I do then? What do I do all day? I don't know what to do. And I was always a really bad leader because I didn't know what leadership was. I didn't know what management was.
And you're not really taught it. And in some cases, I'll even go so far as to say the examples of experiencing it are not really the leaders we want anyways. And so you actually rely on bad habits of like, well, this is what my manager did, so I'll just do that. And we perpetuate some bad approaches to leading in software development that it just has taken us so long to break those habits.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what are some tips that you have for someone that, let's say you just got promoted and you're still kind of hanging on to the core skill sets that got you there, where we all heard that statement, what got you here won't get you there, kind of thing. Yeah. What advice do you have for them for letting go and making that transition?
It's going to sound kind of opposite of what I just said, but be kind to yourself. If leadership's hard, and the hard part about it is we're safe to talk about the skills we don't have as leaders, but we don't talk about the ugly side of leadership too very often. And so it's really hard. And you know what? If you need a day where you're just coding and take it. Don't fight it. Just let it be. I think in some ways, the more I tried to fight people who told me I had to give it up, the more I held on to it, versus if I would have just kind of, grew in my new role while continuing to enjoy some of the past, and it would have been a much more gradual and probably pleasant for everybody transition than me trying to hardcore stop, which then made me hardcore take over from people, or just refused and fight the statements and expectations because they scared me. And so my advice to people as they're making this transition is, with any transition, it takes time, and to give yourself a little bit of a breather and a break that keep challenging yourself, but it's okay if you need a check mark. It's okay. Like if you just need to feel like you know what you're doing for an hour or two, that's okay.
I think that's really great advice, and I'm glad you said that because I've never really talked about this on the show. But one thing that I do every week, actually, I call it my Fun Day Friday, where on a Friday I don't schedule any like strategic meetings or management meetings or anything like that. I'm just going to either do some coding, I'm going to do some, walk around and work on some switches or routers. I'm going to do something that's more takes me back to my roots, back to the technical side of things, and not do management on those days. And I just call it my Fun Day Friday.
Yeah. I mean, what you have to be careful with is you don't make it the association that it's only fun when you're not managing.
True.
But yeah, I mean, it's called mental health. Like we have to take care of ourselves because we can't lead others if we're not in a good place.
Yeah. I think, do you have any, I've had a few people on that talked a little bit about, mental health challenges with tech leaders, and it's kind of a growing thing that people are starting to talk about some more. What have you seen, being a mentor and coach to different groups and different people about, kind of people need to take care of themselves and not be overworked and overstressed? Or what are some things that you've seen that you can talk about?
So there's usually what I'm seeing is kind of two biggest patterns. One is the one that everybody kind of will admit and own is the balance that they're not finding. They're frying themselves out because they're the hub of the team and they got to make sure everything happens, and they can't ever take a day off because something, they can't let a ball drop. And that burnout is unfortunately unnecessary. You just don't realize that it's unnecessary and that you're actually hurting your team from really becoming a high performing team by having that kind of stance. But it is very common because we feel that sense of accountability. We feel that responsibility. We have the ownership and we just want to do a good job. And so we really burn ourselves out and we're not taking time to recover. And at the end of the day, you're a role model for other people. And so if you're burnt out and not produce, if you need your brain to produce and be creative and decide what's going to happen, you kind of can't be burning it out. And the same applies for our developers. We can't say they're our most valuable, asset and then burn them out and then want them to be innovative. It doesn't work. And so that's a super big challenge, but that's the one everybody talks about. That's the one that is safe to talk about. The one that I have been recognizing in myself over the years, and now really partially because I can see it in others, is it kind of can really suck to be a leader in the sense that you're just getting problems all the time and judgments and criticisms and you can't always be as transparent as you want to be, and because there's HR is telling you can, and or you get perceptions about something and you're like, I'm not evil, that's not what happened, right? But a lot of times those rumors you can or can't address, and it just, at the end of the day, a lot of leaders, myself included, can get really just kind of demoralized. Just a little, are we helping? Are we adding value? Is this worth it? I just actually personally had that moment not too long ago. Is like, what I'm doing worth it? And it is, but you do hit a low point if you're not taking care of yourself. And I think that's what I'm really coming, like it's a new topic for me. In fact, Sam Lang brought this concept to Agile 2019 and the conference chair incorporated it. They're going to have a track about self-care. And because what I realized was happening for me was I'm so worried about making sure everybody else is okay. I'm so worried about making sure that I'm not pulling anybody into drama, or that I'm not, adding anybody into the situation, or that I'm not burdening anybody, and that it's my responsibility as a leader to just take the hits, and you can just go on and on for days. Mm-hmm. But that can take a toll. And what was I doing for myself that was reminding myself of the good that I have done, or, relaxing or letting it go or dealing with it. And so it in some cases it was learning some new techniques and things of how to really have that self-care for yourself so that you can do better for everybody else.
So I run into that all the time, where you get negative feedback from people in the business. Where you go to budget meetings, and it's always because you're asking for more money, not because you have anything to show for it. You're not the sales team. You don't make profit. Right. You're an expense hub. So you have all this negative feedback coming in. What are some things that you've learned that help you when you're talking about self-care? What are some things that you can do to help take care of yourself? So I think the one that, and this is extremely personal. This is me. This isn't anybody else. But for me, given in my current role, I'm a external coach and trainer right now. So I'm not into a client site day in, day out. I'm not a practitioner right now. And there are different studies that are out there, but there's a range. Each study has a slightly different range, but everywhere from 6-to-1 to 3-to-1 of positives to criticism. And for me, what I was realizing was happening was I'd go to a conference, I'd do a keynote, right, and I'd get all these amazing, compliments and feedback and inspiration coming back from people and things like that. And so I'd get my ratio would be 20, right? Yeah. And then I'd go to run a conference or do something, and then I'd get inundated on the other end, and I just wasn't balanced. And so even though I was getting lots of positive feedback, it would come and burst in different ways. And I actually got to a place where I started going, I was struggling with feedback that normally I was completely comfortable hearing or, going, oh, okay, yeah, I'll make that tweak. And then suddenly now I was just like, really? You're going to, I was having a completely defensive reaction to it. I was just frustrated. And I started realizing that maybe there are times that I have to pay attention to where my balance is. Where am I mentally at? Because it doesn't mean that I won't accept feedback or that I don't want feedback, but am I in a place to really be able to hear feedback? And I've been able to start telling people, can we have this discussion later? I'm just not okay with it right now, right? And that was a weird thing for me to be able to do, because for me, I'm so big on feedback and continuous growth that it seemed counter to who I was, but it was really making sure I was in a mental state that I could truly hear it and embrace it for what the intent was. And there are just some weeks after a tough situation or a tough scenario that it's not the right time. and that's okay. And I think that was a big technique that I've learned, that I'm like, nope, I'll come back around. I will come back and ask for that feedback, the next week or when I'm slightly better in terms of ratio and where I am mentally. But that it was okay for me to not just always accept it right in that moment. I think that's really good advice, because I know, as a leader, sometimes you rarely hear the positive feedbacks. You only hear the negative things your team does.
Right?
Yeah,
it's like
yeah.
A shot.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think going to conferences and speaking at conferences, I've always recommended people to go speak at conferences, because you do get positive feedback when you speak, even if you suck. Even if you're a bad speaker at conference, people give you positive feedback about getting up there and talking. You may help one person, and you get that positive feedback. Very few people ever come up to you and say, man, you suck as a speaker,
Yeah, they do on your feedback form.
You're right.
But that they won't come to, but that was part of it. It's like, if I'm not ready to look at the feedback forms, I don't need to open it right away.
Right, you don't have to.
And that was a big part of just understanding the timing and the importance of the timing for me.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. So being an Agile coach and being part of the Agile Alliance, can you tell people a little bit about what that is? What is the Agile Alliance?
So yes, the Agile Alliance. I got introduced to the Agile Alliance back in 2007. I attended my first conference in 2007, and basically became incredibly overwhelmed. Like, what do you mean I'm supposed to do this and that? And it seemed so different from the world I was in, because at that time I was replacing the state of Michigan's Medicaid system. So it was this huge, multi-year, very rigid gates kind of project. And the approaches that they were talking about just seemed very nirvana to me at that time. And so the Agile Alliance purpose is a nonprofit, and its mission is to really help software. It started with software development, but really it's all of knowledge work, in my opinion. In some regards, it's beyond. It's helping to create an environment where really complexity is embraced, where knowledge workers and specifically software developers can excel and deliver solutions to problems that we're going to continue to uncover and find, especially as technology evolves as much as it has. So it's a very small or nonprofit organization. The staff is very small. We're primarily known for the large international conference that we hold one year. But the reality is that conference helps us fund just being able to support lots of local conferences and events and trainings, helping to connect people and increase really the manifesto, the Agile Manifesto as noted in 2001, and propel that and allow people to stop feeling like it's nirvana, like I have, where it's no longer nirvana, it's reality, and helping others be able to experience that same journey.
So I have a couple of things about Agile that I want to get into just briefly. I had Mike Cohn on just recently, and Mike Burris. We both kind of talked a little bit about one about Kanban, one about Scrum, and we got into Agile. And I told this on one of those episodes, but I wanted to get your take on it. So I have a team, one of my teams, the help desk team. The manager there asked me if she could go get Scrum Master certified. And I said, sure, yeah. I think that's an interesting approach to take to help desk, the help desk group. But they've implemented Scrum, and they've been kind of doing some Agile project management when it comes to how they manage their workflow with projects around tickets and things like that. Have you ever heard of another company doing something like that?
Oh, tons. Yeah. Absolutely.
So what are some things that you've seen that help out with that?
Help out with how they're running?
Yeah. Just what are some advice that you would have for someone that wants to implement something like that, and what are some benefits for doing that?
Okay, so my general first statement is no framework is going to solve all your problems, and no framework is going to cause all of your problems. And so I tend to come at which Agile framework from a perspective of where do you want your starting point to be? What's some of the more root issues you're having? Because some frameworks will lend itself a little bit better to certain situations than others. But the reality is you're going to be evolving as you go along with your implementation. I'm much more concerned with teams that understand why they're doing something and not just going through the motions because the framework or a process or a project management said to do it, versus understanding really the root value and the objective of what these different frameworks or practices call out. So I've had teams that started in Scrum. I've had teams that started in Kanban. I've had teams that have gone from Scrum to Kanban. I've had teams that have gone from Kanban to Scrum. I've had teams that combine them. I've had teams that do XP. I've had teams that combine Scrum and XP, right? There's so many dynamics that I'm not a very hardcore, you have to pick a framework and stick with it, and this is the best one. I'm much more in the camp of I'm just excited to hear people wanting to experiment, to grow, to try things, and to learn why so that they can make it work for them.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. I've seen some people say, they're Scrum purists or something like that, and you have to do this. And I've never been a fan of that. I've always thought, well, isn't it supposed to be people over process? Aren't you supposed to focus on the people and what fits for that first? Well,
and then the Scrum purists will say, well, Scrum's not a process, it's a framework, and so that doesn't apply. But And I do walk a fine line with it a little bit because I don't want people reinventing the wheel. If you're going to use one of these frameworks, and then you go, well, it doesn't work for me and I'm going to do this. But inevitably that change you made is causing you more problems, and then you blame Scrum or you blame Kanban. Like, I struggle with that too, personally. What I tend to find, though, is people eventually get back to some of those core tenets of each of the frameworks, even if they modify them from the beginning, if you are working with the whys. It might just be a little more painful of a journey sometimes than if you had really kind of embraced it and understood and worked with it. But in some cases, that's the journey that individual needs to take. And I think I come from that because I was a practitioner first, and in many ways that I was the one bringing Scrum in, and we were trying it and going, this isn't working, and what are we going to do? How are we going to do this? And then got to a place where it did work. But it wasn't just, I didn't want to ever walk around going, well, here's what the book says, and versus what us sharing ownership of trying to create an environment where we were excelling.
Yeah, I get that. And I agree with you. Always start with why. Simon Sinek's, quote there.
Yeah.
And Mike's advice, which I thought was pretty interesting, was he said, do it all by the book to start with and be as strict as you can be, even if it's not working at first, because you need to prove that pieces of it don't work before you take them out and modify them. And
I could get behind that. I can't. That's where I was saying, like, sometimes when you change something and you don't even know why you changed it, and then you blame Scrum because you changed something else, right? Yeah. Yeah.
So I thought that was pretty good, and it seems like you're on the same path and the same trajectory. So yeah, I think that's the advice that I'm going to start giving. Then is do it by the book at first and figure out why you're doing it, why things work or don't work, and then modify if you need to.
And I think it comes, the bigger challenge and why I'm loving what I'm doing today and things is not often can someone do a daily Scrum, or can they do, pay attention to work in progress limits. It's, are there leaders helping people share ownership? Are there leaders helping people learn how to experiment and fail and learn? Are there people creating environments where people are comfortable to explore? And that's really, for me, where it tends to fall down more than which framework someone chose.
And all that comes back to leadership.
Absolutely.
Yeah, which again is one of those things where leaders have to trust their team, and their team has to trust their leaders.
And I'm really careful about this. Is we say something like we say that, and it seems really like obvious, and yet it's super hard to do. And the implementation for a lot of people is to a leader to walk up and be like, fine, you're empowered and you have all the accountability, says Scrum, so good luck. Let me know if you need anything from me because I'm just a servant leader. And then we wonder why our teams fail. It's building. It's learning how to be a leader that actually builds towards that two-way trust, and not just, it's great if you can default to trust, but the reality is that's when a lot of vetoes come into play. Yeah. That's when a lot of frustrations or feeling like a bus is just aimed at somebody dynamics come into play in organizations. So I tend to fall more in a leadership style of really, how do we create an environment where we learn how to grow together and experiment together? And from that, then I really do get to a place where I trust them and they trust me.
Yeah, for me, I think it's engagement that helps facilitate the trust. If a leader just tells you, yeah, I trust you, go do this, they're not going to know that you trust. They're not going to, yeah, you said it, but words don't mean anything, Yeah. But if you're engaged with them and you're working together, like you said, and you're talking to them on a regular basis, a daily basis, most of the time, and you open up, they open up, you both learn together, you admit where you're wrong, they admit where they're wrong, so on and so forth, then that trust is built more naturally, more organically, versus just saying, hey, I trust you, go do your thing.
And this goes back to our point that we were making earlier in highlighting, was a lot of leaders don't have the skill sets to truly do that. Do you know, I'm kind of like, this is one of my love-hate relationships in the Agile community and I get the irony that I'm now an Agile coach, but in somewhere along the line, coaching, the skill of professional coaching became for coaches only and not leaders. And I'm in a strong boat of saying, I don't think you can be truly a leader of a high performing team unless you know coaching skills. But we've kind of like separated those somewhere along the lines and lost the benefit of that in terms of the power it can have in creating that type of environment. And so, but no one teaches us this as leaders.
No, you're absolutely right. I remember I got promoted, became a manager of people, and never had any leadership training or any courses or anything like that. And then eventually I got a management course, but it really wasn't leadership. And it was kind of like I'd never really had great bosses that were great leaders prior to that. I mean, I had some good bosses, but I didn't have any bosses that were just all about, growing people and understanding that, what makes them better is they're having a better team, and understanding that, you have to invest in your team to grow them. You can't just give them a book or something like that.
Yeah.
So it was really difficult for me to learn that. It took me many years to kind of figure out through trial and error and through listening to podcasts and reading books and TED Talks and everything else to kind of figure out, these are the things I need to do. I need to, invest in my team, my time, my energy, my assets, my resources, everything I can to help grow them. And in turn, that will benefit the team, that'll benefit them as individuals, and it'll benefit me as a leader.
Yeah. And this is where I genuinely feel lucky, because I hear someone else say I didn't really have great bosses, and it breaks my heart a little because I did. For majority, I mean, I've had a couple leaders and managers that I couldn't put in that category, but majority of my leaders were phenomenal. And because I got exposed into the Agile community so early, I really was influenced by a lot of people that even when I technically didn't know what I was doing, there was an unconscious influence that was really helping me until I did get to a place where I could intentfully lead in the way that I wanted to. And I'm eternally grateful for people, Mike Cohn and Lisa Atkins and the late Dave Hussman, and just a lot of people that kind of challenged me to be the leader. But I was lucky to be exposed to a lot of it at that Agile Alliance conference actually each year, because that was my primary one. And that's part of the reason why I stay very engaged in the community, because for me, it completely altered my purpose and my value that I can bring as a leader in software development.
You mentioned gratitude there, and I think that's another thing that you can do when it comes to self-care is to think about the things that you do have that maybe others don't have in your situation.
100%. 100%.
And getting back to the leadership thing, this is just a fun fact, I guess. I never had a one-on-one outside of an annual performance review until I gave my first one-on-one.
That is horrible.
Just because it wasn't the culture of the company that I worked for the same company for a while, and it wasn't in that culture to do that. So outside of performance reviews, they didn't really do one-on-ones prior to.
I joined Pearson Education, and I remember the first one-on-ones I was having with people, and everybody kept trying to bring me status, and I'm like, that's not what this is. I don't want your status. And they were like, what do you mean? That's what a one-on-one is? And I was like, oh, this just breaks my heart. It energizes me to keep trying to help with, between Jake and I creating the Leading Amazing Teams course, and just really trying to share the skills that make that difference, that make it so that more and more people stop having to admit to things like, I've never had a performance review or never had a one-on-one outside of a performance review. That might haunt me tonight.
Well, it was funny because the first time I gave a one-on-one, I actually this is probably well over 10 years ago, but I searched for what are some questions to ask during a one-on-one, because I thought it was like an interview, like you just interviewed your team member again.
You made me actually think of a moment at TechSmith. I did a lot. In fact, I did one-on-ones with people who didn't report to me, and they were just opportunities to let somebody talk through something they were facing, be challenged about something, deal with something, right? They were all about growth and learning. And so I kind of had a general open door policy in terms of if someone needed something, I met with them and we did it. And for a lot of the people, when we started it, it was like, this is the stupid, these are dumb meetings. I hate my one-on-ones. I don't ever want to do them. And a couple years ago, I got a text from somebody, and he was somebody that didn't report to me. He had done a lot of one-on-ones with me, and we had built a strong relationship. And he sent me a text because he was now having one-on-ones with people, and he had given an offer to somebody to say, hey, if you're really overwhelmed, we can cancel our one-on-one. And the response was, no, this provides me so much value. This is the one thing I don't want to cancel. And he sent it to me kind of going, I feel like you've earned this as much as I have. And it was just, it's small, but it is changing, right? And that's the part that gives me hope, is that hopefully in a few more years, there'll be more and more people who have the different experience and not the one that maybe we both had.
Yeah. I think when I first implemented one-on-ones, one of the things the team were afraid of, like it was going to be, let me inspect you and what you're doing kind of thing.
Correct. I want your status. Report to me.
But it turned out to be more like, oh, I get time, to share whatever I want to share with the boss. I get time to learn what they're looking for in depth, to find out more about them, to share the things that I was successful on, and they started to like that, and I liked it too. I mean, it was just a great thing.
Yeah, I still have them, even with I still have. I'll get a call and it's like, I just need to work through something, and I'm like, okay, let's meet, and it's for them. It's not for you. And that was always the hard part for me when I saw people canceling them all the time. I'm like, well, I have another meeting. I'm like, it's not for you. It's for them, and they're your priority. And so I'm pretty, I might be haunted by that a little bit. Like, no, that's horrible.
So tell me a little bit about this Leading Amazing Teams course.
When I went into back into the Agile coaching and training world and left being a practitioner, you get to see the breadth. And, I think sometimes as a leader, as a practitioner, you sometimes get in this place where you think, I'm the only one struggling with this, or I was the only one that had a hard time. Everybody else knows this, and I struggled. And so going back in and getting to see breadth and going to company after company and different leaders and watching the patterns emerge of where leaders struggle, what have we not been taught, and where are we struggling when it comes to truly creating high-performing teams and not being the hub and holding back scaling of what we can contribute and do in an organization. I ended up partnering with my colleague, Jake Calabrese, and we decided to build a course that was really centered on, when we say leadership, what do we mean? and to highlight the differences between the scientific management approach and to call out the skills and the intentful decisions as leaders we have to be making in order to truly share ownership, which gets us to that next level. And what tools are we considering and not been exposed to? Things like 2% truth, or the responsibility process by Christopher Avery, or the coaching conversation, the flow of the coaching conversation, and using powerful questions. And just, there's so many tools that I accumulated over the years that were so fundamental to me being the leader that I became, that I wanted to create a course and an environment where I could, with my partner, Jake, kickstart that journey for others the way that the Agile conferences kickstarted it for me. And I'm really I do a lot of different classes. I do a lot of different things. And it's kind of like children. You're not supposed to have a favorite, but I do. And my favorite is 100%. We just finished a public course in San Francisco yesterday. And the comments that we get back and continue to hear from people that had taken the course last year and the difference that they made. I just heard from one individual who took it last early spring and said, well, I'm now trying to figure out what I get to focus and work on within the organization because I have a lot more time again now. And he had gone from going, my team sucks and they won't step up and do anything. And so watching the impact from this class, because you're not just learning tools, you're understanding you need to change too. And it's not just your teams and what kind of problems are you really going to get to tackle. And it's both terrifying and inspiring and exhausting and energizing all at the same time. And it's, I'm super, just really proud of it.
Well, how can people find out more about if they can attend or get involved in the course?
So this is the part that I'm really bad at. I only do work stuff. So I should know exactly what, you can go to the AgileForAll.com website, and our courses are listed there. We have a number of public classes available in 2019. Mostly we stick to Denver and San Francisco, but we also have a Chicago one. But if you ask me the dates right offhand, I'm not very good at marketing, so I don't ever have that stuff.
I'll tell you what, I will look up that address and I'll put it in the show notes and link it up. So if anybody
You'll
needs
make me look like I'm proficient at my job.
That's right. They can go right there and grab it. How about that?
The nice part about co-training this class with Jake is I just leave during that part. I make him do any kind of marketing stuff.
Nice. So real quick, how can people find out more about some of the things you're doing or connect with you online?
I do have a Twitter account, but I'm kind of on a Selfcare Twitter hiatus right now.
Good for you.
So you can ping me and I will respond if I'm directly tagged, but I'm not really on Twitter in general right now, but it's T_Broderick. I have a blog that is www.leadtotheedge.com. Mm-hmm. I weekly release just a short snippet blog, but it is centered around leadership topics and some occasional pet peeves about things that are going on, because that's, I'm a little ranty. You can always find me through the AgileForAll.com site as well, and I am on LinkedIn as also.
All right. Well, I'll link all those up in the show notes, and I really appreciate having you on. Do you have any last tips of advice for new tech leaders?
If I can do it, you can.
I hope you guys enjoyed that conversation with Tricia Broderick, and if so, please head over to iTunes, leave me a rating and review, and thank you so much for listening to the show in 2018. It was a great year, and I'm expecting more for 2019. There's going to be some more solo shows. There's going to be a lot more interviews. And hopefully we can help encourage people to take that step in their career, to become better leaders, to encourage those around them. And even if you're not looking to become a manager or get a promotion, you can still lead the way that people need to be led and be that positive influence that is necessary in the technology environments that we have today. Again, thank you so much.